focus of all those documentaries and Hollywood movies. But there's one version of Titanic we have never seen until this morning.
I didn't want to die. And I didn't see much chance of living, but I was gradually getting frozen up. And by the grace of God, I came across a lifeboat, and they pulled me in.
New exclusive photographs, by far the best yet, are in from the Titanic. For most of this century, that huge passenger liner has been a dead ship, resting in an ocean grave that, until these past few days, no one had seen. Now, scientists have even seen the iceberg damage that doomed the Titanic.
A camera pulled from the depths where the Titanic sank has just exposed some shocking pictures. These photos reveal big mistakes and flaws with the ship, exposing dark secrets long hidden beneath the waves. The Titanic, along with her sister ships, the Olympic and Britannic, were supposed to be marvels of the sea, yet they all ended in tragedy. What if these pictures reveal horrors we never imagined? Let's expose these ghosts from the past that are going to change the course of the tragic accident. The Titanic's hidden errors uncovered. The Titanic was one of three large ships known as the Olympic-class liners, along with the RMS Olympic and the HMHS Britannic. Sadly, each of these ships met a tragic end. The Olympic drew a lot of attention during its construction, while the Titanic became famous even before it was finished. People were excited about its first voyage, not knowing it would also be its last. At the time, the White Star Line, the company that owned these ships, was doing well, unaware of the disaster that was about to unfold. Early photographs taken before it sank in the North Atlantic Ocean give us a glimpse into its early days, showing the ship in all its glory. During its construction, it was celebrated as a marvel of engineering. A dedicated team worked together with a shared goal of ensuring everything was perfect. They had a budget of over $3 million, which would be about $310 million today. It was huge, measuring 882 feet and 9 inches in length, 92 feet and 6 inches wide at its widest point, and standing 104 feet tall. These numbers might not fully convey its grandeur, but the images help us appreciate just how impressive it really was. But even from the beginning, it seemed destined for disaster. Before it even set sail, the ship was already linked to several ominous events. During its 2-year construction, 8 workers died in various accidents, casting a shadow over the project. By March 31, 1912, it was complete, drawing attention from all over the world.
Wireless messages were sent by ships who were traveling in the same waters, and they were alerting each other to potential risk.
Huge crowds, including international reporters, gathered to see this massive new ship, with many eager to be among its first passengers. But their excitement would soon turn to shock in a way no one expected. After much anticipation, it began its first and final voyage on April 10, 1912, with about 100,000 enthusiastic spectators and journalists from around the world watching. But this wasn't the ship's first trip into the water. It had already traveled from Belfast, where it was built, to Southampton on April 2, 1912. This journey was widely publicized as a luxurious experience meant to carry thousands, including some of the wealthiest and most well-known people of that time. Despite all the excitement and preparation, no one could have predicted the tragic events that would soon unfold, forever changing history. The ship set off on its first journey from Southampton, England, heading to New York City, and it captured the world's attention. However, the disaster that lay ahead was something no one saw coming. The journey was carefully planned. Starting from Southampton, it would stop in Cherbourg, France, and then Queenstown in Ireland, before making the long trip across the Atlantic to New York. The return trip would follow the same route back. At the same time, a major coal strike caused problems, draining resources as coal had to be taken from other White Star Line ships to fuel the journey. Although the strike ended before it left, there wasn't enough time to fully restock the coal. Unaware of the danger ahead, the journey began with overlooked dangers, a premonition of doom. Early in its journey, the Titanic almost collided with another ship, the SS New York. This happened as it, which could carry up to 3,547 people, 905 in first class, 564 in second class, and 134 in third class, along with 944 officers and crew, was leaving the dock. As the massive ship moved, it displaced so much water that the SS New York, which was moored nearby, broke free and drifted dangerously close. People watching were filled with fear, but the situation was quickly brought under control, and it continued on its way. After the disaster, some wondered if this close call was an early sign that it was doomed from the start. Photos from its first voyage show immense popularity and size, reminding us of a time before the tragic events. But as the ship left port, another serious problem was brewing, a fire in the coal storage area. Amazingly, this fire had been burning for 10 days before it even set sail. For over 100 years, people have debated how much this fire might have contributed to its tragic end. Visible damage from the fire could be seen on the ship's exterior, suggesting there were dangers from the very beginning. Later investigations showed that the crew had been fighting the fire in the coal storage for days, but they couldn't put it out before the disaster struck, revealing the serious challenges faced during this ill-fated voyage. The fire weakened the ship's structure, likely making it more vulnerable when it hit the iceberg. This terrible collision has led to many discussions about what could have been done differently. We still don't know what started the fire, but its impact is undeniable. The fire didn't sink the ship on its own.
Despite the violence of the sinking and all that time on the bottom, what's inside that bow in particular is still a ghostly sense of the ship that was.
But it played a big role in the structural damage that contributed to its tragic sinking. A journalist named Sonnen Mullen found some old photographs in an attic in England. These photos showed a large dark streak along the side of the ship, about 30 feet long. This streak marked the area weakened by the fire. Interestingly, this was the exact spot where it later hit the iceberg, leading to its sinking. This coincidence raises an important question. Could the disaster have been avoided if the fire hadn't weakened the ship? More surprising details about it keep coming to light. Each new discovery, like Mullen's photographs, gives us a better understanding of the events and decisions that led to this disaster. It becomes clearer that the sinking wasn't just about hitting an iceberg. It was the result of human mistakes, environmental factors, and bad timing, all combining to send the ship to the bottom of the icy sea. The iceberg itself plays a central role in this sad story. Over a century ago, this enormous iceberg was key in its demise on the cold night of April 14, 1912. As the ship sailed through the dark, it was unaware of the deadly icebergs that could even take down a ship as strong as it. People are still curious about where this huge iceberg came from and how it got there. It's believed to have broken off from the Jakobshavn Glacier near Disco Bay in western Greenland, forming around 1910 or 1911, and was likely pushed northward by the West Greenland Current. As it sailed on, the danger was already too close for comfort, the Titanic's inevitable course. As we think back on the Titanic's journey, more questions arise. Captain Edward John Smith and his crew were aware they were navigating into perilous conditions. That year, sea ice had extended unusually far south. Despite receiving multiple radio warnings from other vessels about significant ice and many icebergs ahead, the ship persisted on its course toward New York. This narrative prompts us to reflect on the choices made during this particular sea voyage. When it embarked on its maiden journey, it encountered numerous cautions and overlooked dangers, leaving us to ponder what went awry. One critical alert informed the crew about substantial icebergs directly in their path. The next day, they observed the SS steamer Rappahannock traveling in the opposite direction. Although it is uncertain if the Rappahannock issued a warning about the ice, its recent damage from ice suggests it likely did. On the day of the disaster, several ice warnings were received. The first came from the Coronia, which reported large icebergs, smaller ice chunks known as growlers, and extensive ice presence. Despite the gravity of this warning, Captain Smith merely acknowledged it without further action. Another caution came from the Dutch ship Noordam, highlighting the peril of continuing along the same route. Captain Smith recognized this message too, but remained unconcerned. Throughout the day, additional warnings pointed to dangerous icebergs directly ahead, yet these were also disregarded. Eventually, a collision with a massive iceberg led to a catastrophic tragedy that claimed over 1,500 lives. Years later, a remarkable find at the sea bottom was an old camera belonging to Seaman W. Wood, a photography enthusiast.
we have lots of historical information, but often there are biases in those historical accounts. Even the eyewitnesses of the sinking of Titanic had many different perceptions of how that sinking took place.
Just 2 days before the tragic incident, Wood had photographed a large iceberg and noted its location. Ironically, the exact spot where the disaster would occur. While it remains unclear if it was the same iceberg, its proximity suggests it might have been. One of the earliest reports from that fateful night was by Dr. Washington Dodge, a prominent figure from San Francisco involved in healthcare, finance, and politics. He and his family boarded in Southampton for the voyage. After the tragedy, aboard the rescue ship Carpathia, Dr. Dodge penned a letter describing the events. His trembling handwriting reflected his distress. His narrative provides a vivid depiction of the chaos during the last hours, a night when a devastating impact altered everything. Dr. Dodge recounted hearing a loud crash, the vessel striking the iceberg. Initially, everyone was reassured that all was well, leading him to try and return to sleep. However, unable to dismiss his concerns, he checked again, only to discover that life jackets were desperately needed. As the situation deteriorated, he ensured his wife and son were in one of the first lifeboats, although he noticed many were launched with ample space remaining. His compelling account remains one of the most poignant from that tragic evening. The vessel carried 2,229 individuals that night. Tragically, there were not enough lifeboats for everyone. Despite its vast size, there were only 20 lifeboats, and just 18 were deployed in the emergency. Moreover, many lifeboats were lowered half-empty, as the crew feared overloading them might cause breakage. But there were a few that could survive. Hidden dangers that doomed the Titanic. Dr. Dodge's survival story illustrates the chaos and peril of that fateful night. He managed to secure a spot in a lifeboat, thanks to an officer aiding passengers on one side of the ship. Yet his escape was far from smooth. As the lifeboat descended, a strong rush of water from the ship nearly overwhelmed it. The occupants shouted for help, which fortunately was noticed in time. They avoided being lowered into the turbulent water and ultimately reached safety. This narrative underscores the immense fear and confusion that ensued after the ship struck the iceberg, inciting panic, particularly around the lifeboats, the sole means of escape. The policy of prioritizing women and children, although well-intentioned, led to fewer survivors than potentially possible. After reaching safety, many crew members were too frightened to return for more survivors. They feared capsizing or being pulled down by the sinking vessel, leaving numerous individuals in the icy waters, where survival was slim. At the time, regulations deemed the number of lifeboats sufficient.
New exclusive photographs, by far the best yet, are in from the Titanic. For most of this century, that huge passenger liner has been a dead ship, resting in an ocean grave that, until these past few days, no one had seen. Now, scientists have even seen the iceberg damage that doomed the Titanic.
A stark reminder of inadequate safety measures. The prevailing rules were outdated and failed to account for a vessel carrying such a large number of passengers. The attitude of the White Star Line, the vessel's owning company, further exacerbated issues. They prioritized aesthetics over safety, fearing that an abundance of lifeboats would mar the luxurious appearance. Common belief held that in an emergency, the vessel would remain buoyant long enough for everyone to evacuate. However, the disaster unfolded much quicker than anticipated, highlighting a severe unpreparedness. This sparked intense discussions about the insufficient number of lifeboats. Complicating matters, a hidden fire had been smoldering for days within a coal storage area, weakening the ship's structure. When the iceberg tore through the hull, the vessel's fate was sealed. As the ship fractured and descended into the ocean, the inadequate safety measures became glaringly apparent. Decisions influenced by aesthetics and outdated standards compromised everyone's safety. What was once a pinnacle of naval engineering became a grim lesson in disaster management and the repercussions of human error. Water began flooding the lower decks, causing the ship to list dangerously. Given its length, over 882 feet, it required substantial water to disrupt its balance. This imbalance exerted excessive stress on the structure, particularly at the midsection, indicating the severity of the situation. Around 2:17 a.m., the structural integrity could no longer withstand the strain. A resounding crack signaled the ship breaking apart amid its towering smokestacks. The inferior quality of the iron rivets in the hull played a part in this catastrophic failure. It was astonishing that such a luxurious and costly ship was constructed with substandard materials. Debates continue about whether the ship breaking in two hastened its sinking, but it was undeniably a pivotal and tragic moment. From the icy waters and the relative safety of the lifeboats, horrified survivors heard the ship cracking and watched as the stern rose before slowly vanishing into the cold Atlantic, claiming many lives. Amid the turmoil, questions arose about the whereabouts of Captain Edward John Smith. Discussions about his actions during those harrowing moments persist. After the collision, he was last seen heading to the ship's bridge, marking the commencement of a dire situation. Captain Smith, with over 40 years of maritime experience, was acutely aware of the gravity. His oversight in conducting lifeboat drills for the crew and passengers was a critical error. Proper training could have potentially saved more lives. Post-disaster, tales of bravery surfaced from the frozen ice. Captain Smith's contested legacy. As the Titanic was sinking, Captain Smith was busy trying to help with the rescue efforts. There are stories about him saving a baby by swimming it to a lifeboat. Even though he had the chance to save himself, he reportedly chose to stay and go down with his ship. Many see this as a brave act, but there are also stories that he wasn't there when his leadership was most needed, which makes people have mixed feelings about him. The debate over what Captain Smith did is still strong and without a clear answer. Adding to the mystery, some rumors suggest that Captain Smith might have survived and started a new life on a distant island. But this story lacks any proof and is generally seen as just a myth. Captain Smith's story, along with the tragedy of the ship, continues to stir deep emotions and heated discussions. Some view him as a heroic figure, while others think he failed at a critical moment. But this wasn't the worst part. The uncertainty about his final actions keeps the story alive, full of bravery, sadness, and the ongoing search for the whole truth. Years later, the discovery of the ship's remains brought new attention to its story. By the mid-20th century, advances in technology allowed for a more focused search. The expedition was led by Robert Ballard, who guided a team from America and France aboard the U.S. Navy ship Cunard.
People needn't have died if they'd only responded to those distress flares. They should have responded, in my mind, gone over there and rescued those people.
They used the Argo, a special deep-sea camera, to dive about 13,000 feet below the ocean's surface. There, for the first time since 1912, they saw the wreck, broken in half on the ocean floor, a haunting reminder of the tragedy. Seeing the entire wreck was a major moment in maritime history. More than a century after it sank, the ship still fascinates people. Recently, a mapping company revealed the first complete digital image of the wreck, giving us a new view of the famous wreck. Before this, only parts had been visible since its discovery on September 1, 1985. The wreck is enormous and in a remote part of the ocean, which has always made it hard to document fully. But now with modern technology, we can see the whole wreck clearly. This achievement was made possible by Magellan, a company that used advanced techniques to closely examine the ship's front, back, and the debris around it. They created a digital model of the entire site, allowing for a detailed study that wasn't possible before.
You won't find bodies at Titanic. You won't find skeletons. The bones actually dissolve into solution very rapidly at that depth. What anybody who's explored the wreck finds is pairs of shoes.
This new digital image not only shows the size and seriousness of the wreck, but also highlights parts we've never seen. This project stands as one of the most detailed underwater explorations ever, collecting 16 terabytes of data and over 715,000 high-definition images and videos. This treasure trove of new digital content has sparked excitement among scientists and historians, giving them the tools to explore parts of the wreck that were once out of reach or hard to see. Did Magellan's exploration compromise the integrity of historical sites for scientific